Well, good morning, everybody, and I want to take this opportunity to thank the Surrey Sheriff's Program for letting me come here this morning and talk about something that I'm very passionate about. Jill Glennie and Noel Bentley and Jessica Houston are really thank you very much for doing that. It's really super nice to be able to be here this morning. And before we start, though, I'd like to introduce you to a couple of other people that are here with me this morning. There are three of us, in actual fact. There's me, of course, and I'm here because I'm the one telling the story. And then there's a gentleman by the name of Boyan Slat. He's a gentleman from a 29-year-old ocean entrepreneur from Holland, and his mission is to go and save the world. And maybe, Boyan, you'd like to say a few words?
Yes, Bob, I really would like to say a few words. Thank you so much for coming here today. We have a very important mission on our plate, and I want to be able to tell you about that. And thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you, Boyan. That's really good, and I'm so happy to be able to have you here today. The other person we have with us here today, well, it's not quite what you expect, actually. He's a gentleman, he's 80 years old. He comes in at about 200 tons, and he's about 110 feet long. He's a blue whale, and he lives in the North Pacific Ocean. And his name is Kayan. Kayan, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, Bob, it's so nice of you to be able to invite me here this morning.
And it's such a treat to be able to meet Boyan. And it's very important to me that he's doing the work he's doing because we live in the ocean, and the oceans are very important to us. Thank you, Cam. So you may think that my talk today is going to be about oceans. And if that's what you think, you'd be partly right. But in reality, my real talk today is about plastic and the impact that plastic is having on our lives. In a just short 50-year period, we have gone from having absolutely clean, pristine oceans to oceans that are now huge, massive garbage patches full of plastic all around the world. In fact, there's 5 of them around the world. And the biggest one is right here in our backyard, in the North Pacific, which is where Kayan lives. These plastic garbage patches get together because ocean currents bring all of the plastic it's in the oceans and collect them in these big, massive garbage patches. So, Bob, you want to ask that question. Just exactly how big are these garbage patches? Well, I can tell you for sure that the one in the North Pacific, if you took all of the major cities in the world and put them into that garbage patch, there'd be room left over. That's pretty massive. If you look at it from another point of view, if you took 2/3 of the province of British Columbia and put it in that massive, big garbage patch, there'd be a little bit of room left over. So you get an idea of the size and the dimension of the problem. Kayan, have you got a few words you'd like to say about that?
Bob, yes, I do. Thank you very much. We don't go near those patches. We don't have anything to do with them because they are too dangerous. And thank you for bringing that to our attention because everybody in the world has to know about these garbage patches.
Thank you, Kayan. So if you thought I was going to be talking today about oceans, or plastics rather, you'd be partly right. But in actual fact, my talk today is about rivers. Rivers, yes, absolutely. Rivers contribute over 90% of the plastic that gets into our oceans every single day. And Boyan, maybe you have a few words to say about rivers.
Yes, Bob, thank you. We've spent 4 or 5 years researching what and where the plastic comes from. And it was a complete surprise to us that we found out that rivers were the major contributor to where the plastic was coming from. And so being able to talk about this and put a dimension around it is really important to what we're doing.
Thank you, Boyan. That's exactly what I've been feeling as well. Rivers are an important piece of who we are, where we live, and how we live. There are 5 rivers. Boyan, you didn't mention that. I'm sorry, but there are 5 rivers that are major polluters to the oceans and contribute the most plastic to the oceans. And it's difficult for you to imagine how a river could contain or be that pollutant when it comes to plastic. So I want to take you on a trip. I want to take you with me on a small trip. So if you just come along with me, and we're going to go to the top of the Alex Fraser Bridge, the pedestrian part on the west side. If you can just imagine you're standing there, cars are going on behind you, and you're looking east
and you see a river. You see the Fraser River, the mighty Fraser River, flowing by, nice and clear and free, no problem. And if you run across to the west side, if you don't get hit by a truck while you're going across the bridge, you're going to see the same thing on the other side of the bridge, all the way out to the Strait of Juan de Fuca, all the way out to the ocean. But let's change the glasses slightly and look at that whole picture with a bit of a different filter. Let's go back and look at that east side. And what if all we could see, for as far as the eye could see, from bank to bank, all the way to the mountains, was nothing but garbage and plastic? So much that you think you could actually walk across it. That wouldn't be a very good idea, and if you go back to the west side of that bridge, what you would see there is, again, that same plastic rushing to the Strait of Juan de Fuca, rushing out into the Pacific Ocean, to be gathered up by ocean currents and put back into that garbage patch, that big plastic garbage patch in the middle of the North Pacific Ocean. It gets bigger and is growing 24 hours, 7 days a week. It just grows and grows. Ken, what have you got to say about that plastic patch?
Well, thank you, Bob. Again, it's very, very difficult for us to go by there because, as you say, it keeps growing, and we're not sure what's there anymore. And so we have a little rule among ourselves. We just don't go there anymore at all. Thank you, Ken. And yes, I don't think I would either. In fact, I recall in 1962, I actually sailed through that entire area, and there wasn't anything there. It was just a wide open piece of ocean. So if you think my talk today was about rivers, you'd be partly right. My talk today is really about interceptors. Well, what's an interceptor? It's something that we can put into a river and have it collect the garbage and the plastic before it ever reaches the ocean. Wow, what a fantastic idea. Boyan, this is your invention. Do you want to have a few words about it?
Yes, thank you, Bob. Absolutely, I do want to have a few words about that. The interceptor is a fantastic piece of equipment. It's so simple that it can be run from anywhere in the world by anybody. It is just a glorified barge with solar systems for electricity, self-regulating, self-managed, and it collects the garbage. And the way it works is that it's anchored in the middle of the river in such a way that boats can pass freely by, but there's a boom attached to the shore of the river, and it collects the garbage as it flows down the river, takes it to the mouth of the barge, collects it on an escalator system, and dumps it into bins that are inside that barge. The bins get full. Someone comes along and takes it away, puts it into a recycling container, and brings it back. Simple, and it works.
Thank you, Boyan. That's exactly right. It is a very simple system. And it is saving culture. It is saving people. It's giving cultures where these rivers exist an absolute monetization component to how they live. So if you think that my talk today was going to be about interceptors, well, you're partly right. But my talk today, and this is why I'm here, and this is why I have this topic on my plate, is personal. What is the impact on me? Why is it important to me to talk about oceans and plastic? I'm a sailor, you can tell. I do this I do this because it's fun and it's an easy thing to do. But a few years ago, I was on a trip between Boundary Bay and Duke Point, 3 of us in a boat. We were halfway across the Strait of Georgia, when all of a sudden there was this noise at the front of the boat. We ran up to the front trying to figure out what was going on. All we saw were dolphins everywhere, dolphins going here and going there, banging into the boat, talking among themselves. Hey, George, don't do that. Sarah, come on top. Bob, go underneath. You can just imagine them talking back and forth. Well, of course, we can't talk dolphin, but they were having a ball. And I've never seen that many dolphins on the bow of my sailboat at any time, although I've seen lots of marine life in my sailing time here on the West Coast. They stuck around for 15 minutes or so, and they said, yeah, that's it, we're done, we're going to move on. I want my grandchildren to be able to experience that very same thing, and my great-grandchildren. That's why it's important to me, and that's why it's a passion of mine to make sure that oceans remain clean, and we get rid of all of that garbage. The second story of the two that I want to tell you about why my passion is here is during the summer, I was a racer when I had my boat and sailing,
And we would race on Tuesday nights. It's because the sun is up later on. And this one particular night, it was so calm, the sea was like glass. Now, if you're going to be running a race and you're a sailboat, you need wind. You can't run your motor. You have to, when you're running a race, you have to actually put your sail up. There were about 12 boats in the race that particular night. And what happened was, because there was no wind, the sea was absolutely calm, the boats started collecting together in a circle all around. So we got to a point where we could talk to each other, but there was this big open area in the circle. And at one point, up popped a black fin. Oh, hey, what's going on here? And that became a killer whale, an adult killer whale. Holy mackerel, right here. Almost we could talk to it. And then that became an entire pod of killer whales. And we had never seen that sort of a situation before. The killer whales stayed around maybe for 10 or 15 minutes, and then off they went. But you can tell that it had a real impact on what I was, on me as far as being able to remember it is concerned. So at the end of that, though, just before we decided to stop racing, one of the guys in another boat over here that you could talk to, they'd been drinking beer or pop or something. That doesn't really matter. But when they were finished, they threw their drinks, their cans, into the water, into the ocean, off of Boundary Bay, or Point Roberts, rather. So do you know how long it takes for a tin to dissolve in the ocean? 408 years. So we're going to be putting more tins in than are leaving if we continue to do that. Mike and I had some words afterwards. I'm not sure he agreed or disagreed or decided to change his way of life at all, but it got it off my chest. That's the other reason why it's important to me to make sure that we have oceans clean. People need to understand what this really means all the way around. So I achieved my goal in that sense. So today we talked about oceans. Today we talked about plastic. Today we talked about rivers. Today we talked about interceptors. And today you found out absolutely why oceans are so important to me. And you also met two of my friends, Boyan Slat from Holland, who has got a mission to save the world through his work with the Ocean Cleanup Project, and Kayan, a whale, a blue whale that lives in the North Pacific Ocean, who is impacted by the plastic that's getting into the ocean. And so I would invite you to join me in supporting the Ocean Cleanup Project wherever you can, doing whatever you can possibly think of doing. And I really appreciate you listening to my story today because it's a story that has to be told. Thank you very much.